So we were talking about phases of the moon and new moon dates and how you notice that they're about a month apart and just under a month. They actually go through a complete cycle, a month or a synodic month in 29 and a half days. So the full moon dates are likewise going to be about a month apart, just under a month. And so because the synodic cycle is 29 and a half days, every month except for February could possibly have two full moons in that month. And so this year that actually happens in October. October 1st, there's a moon, full moon, and then October 31st, there's going to be a full moon. And so for Halloween this year, there's going to be a full moon. The actual time of that full moon, if you look at this, is not going to so much be that night, but it's going to be 5 hours earlier than that, 5 hours because we're on daylight savings time, and so that would be about 9:49 a.m. So 9:49 a.m. it's going to be full moon, so really it'll be a little bit more full looking probably the night of the 30th than it would the night of the 31st. I'm recording this video on September 1st. So if you look at your syllabus, then what you find is that the most recent new moon, it says, was August 19th. Well, it's August 19th at 02:42 Universal Time. So that means you subtract 5 hours from that because we're on daylight savings time. That would put the last new moon really on the evening of August 18th. So that means it's about 14 days after the new moon. So what phase is the moon right now? Well, if it takes 29 days to go all the way around, 29 and a half days, well, half of 29 and a half is almost 15 days. So it takes almost 15 days to go from new moon to full moon. Well, if you look at the syllabus, tomorrow is full moon. So that's about 15 days. So that means that a little bit more than 7 days is from new moon to first quarter. And so that means that first quarter is about 7 days after the new moon, and then full moon is about 15 days afterwards, and about 7 or so days after that is going to be the third quarter. And so roughly each of the, first quarter is close to a week after new moon, full moon's close to a week after first quarter, third quarter or last quarter is close to a week after full moon, and then a week after that is going to be new moon again. Ballpark. It's not exactly 7 days, because it's 4 times 7 is 28. This is really 29 and a half, so it's close. But the age of the moon is therefore going to be related to the phase of the moon, and so that also relates to when it rises and sets. And so sometimes when I'm asked to give presentations to elementary schools, I teach the kids something called the moon dance. The moon dance is where you have like two hands. One hand is the sun, one hand is the moon. Okay, and so what you do is you say, okay, that at new moon, they're both in the same direction. So they rise together, they're highs in the sky together, they set together. So the new moon rises at sunset, it's highs in the sky at noon, and it sets at sunset. Well, that makes sense. After all, it's lined up with the sun. So after about a week, though, the moon has moved. Okay, it's moved about a quarter way around the sky. So really, how does it work? Well, if you look up in the sky, the moon moves a little bit to the left each time. So what happens is the sun rises and the moon's lagging behind about a fourth of the way around. So at first quarter, when the sun is highest in the sky, is when the moon rises. So the first quarter moon rises at noon. Okay. And then as it goes around, the sun sets. And when the sun sets, the moon is highest in the sky. And then it keeps going until the moon is straight down, or the sun is straight down, and the moon is just setting. So that would be midnight. So the first quarter moon sets at midnight. So if you want to go out and observe something like a meteor shower and you don't want the moonlight interfering and providing light pollution, the best time to observe it is going to be after midnight if it's close to a first quarter moon. What about a crescent moon? Okay, so crescent moon's between the two. So that means it would rise mid-morning and then set a few hours after sunset. Well, in order to set a few hours after sunset, it has to be low in the western sky when it's setting. Okay, because low in the western sky is, you know, it's going to set just a few hours later. So a crescent moon, you always look to the west if it's a waxing crescent. What about a full moon? It's exactly opposite the sun. So as the sun's setting, the moon's rising. Rises at sunset. When the sun's rising, the moon's setting. It's exactly opposite. So that means at midnight, when the sun's straight down, the moon is highest in the sky. So the full moon is highest in the sky at midnight. What about the waxing gibbous? Well, if first quarter rises at noon and full moon rises at sunset, waxing gibbous has to be in between, like mid-afternoon. So where's rising? Off in the east. So if it's a waxing gibbous moon, look in the east in the afternoon and you'll see the moon rising. Okay. And then it sets. When does it set? Well, full moon sets at sunrise. First quarter sets at midnight. It's between the two, so it's going to set, you know, like in the wee hours of the morning, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning or something like that. Okay. So likewise, third quarter moon. When does that rise? Well, the third quarter moon is going to rise at midnight, highest in the sky at sunrise, and set around noon. What about waning crescent? It's going to be between. So it'll be the waning crescent is going to rise a few hours before sunrise. So that means it's rising a few hours before sunrise. So at sunrise, it's already up in the eastern sky a little ways. Okay, so in the morning, you look in the east. If it's a waning crescent, you see a little smiley face moon, you know, right around sunrise. And so this table right here gives you kind of a graphic of the rise and set times of the various moons. Now, one of the labs that you are going to be doing is going out and watching the moon for 2 weeks go through its phases. So you want to go out and look when the moon's going to be up. Okay, so you need to decide, do you want to go out a little bit after sunset? Do you want to go out a little bit before sunrise? Do you want to go out at midnight and look at the moon? Because you want to do this for like 2 weeks about the same time every night. So if you want to go out and look at the moon for about 2 weeks around sunset, you want it to be up for 2 weeks. Okay, so you look at the table up here, and you would say, well, that means you want to start about the time that the moon is going to be setting, because it's going to be setting a little bit later every night because it moves a little bit to the east. It's roughly an hour later every night. So you want to start a little bit after new moon and go for 2 weeks. If you want to instead observe the moon for 2 weeks starting at midnight, then you want to start a little bit after the first quarter moon and go for 2 weeks. If you want to observe the moon just around sunrise for 2 weeks, if you're a morning person, then what you would do is you would start observing the moon close to full moon and then observe for 2 weeks. Okay, if you don't start about that time that the moon is just setting, that means that after a week or so, the moon's going to be already gone, and you're not going to get your 2 weeks of observations in. And so the whole idea of the lab is to go for 2 weeks at the same time. So how do you know when it's sunrise, or rather what phase the moon's going to be? You look in the syllabus. Okay, that's why it's there. You look in the syllabus. And so use that to sort of guide you as to when to go out and observe the moon. So the rising and setting depends on the phase of the moon, which also depends on where you look in the sky to see the moon. Okay, so all this ties together. If you understand how all this works, then it works really smoothly. And that also means that you can estimate, if you know when it's going to be full moon, you can estimate about what phase the moon's going to be later. Okay, so let's say that at Christmas time this year, you want to know what phase is the moon and when does it rise. Well, in your syllabus, you see that there's a new moon, and the new moon is going to be December 14. You see there's a full moon December 30. So what's Christmas? December 25th. So I say you get a telescope for Christmas. You want to know about the moon. Okay, so that's about 5 days before the full moon. Okay, so what phase is that? What's about a week before full moon? That's going to be first quarter. So this is 5 days before. So Christmas would be a little bit after the first quarter moon. So it's going to be a waxing gibbous. Okay. So it's a little bit after, it's a few hours, it's a couple days after the first quarter. Okay, we know that the first quarter moon rises at noon, so that means that a couple of days later it's going to be rising like 2 or 3 in the afternoon or something like that, which means at sunset it's already going to be up there somewhere. It's not going to be highest in the sky because it's not first quarter at sunset, but it'll be a little bit to the west. It's going to set a little bit after midnight, so about 2 or 3 in the morning. And so that's how you would use this idea of the moon phase, the age of the moon, and the rising and the setting. You know, what I teach the elementary school kids, this moon dance thing, and that would be how you would figure out the rising, setting of the moon, where you look in the sky, and so forth.